to the May edition of Learning Now TV. We join you from both sides of the Atlantic, but as I always say, the sun shines on the righteous, and that's why it's shining in Wales and not over in New York on Nigel.
Sad but true. Sad but true.
Well, as well as the sun, it's a very exciting edition of the show today because we have two new features coming up, as well as some amazing guests. Firstly, Rob Hubbard, who some viewers may recognise. Rob's been in the industry. I've certainly known Rob more years than I care to count. But he is starting a new mini-series on the important topic of sustainability in learning and development. And for those of you who aren't aware of Rob's work, he has his own business, very successful. He's had that for a long time. He's actually set up as a B Corp, which means it's about giving back and sort of profit sharing. And so that sustainability message and ethos is something that's very close to his heart. And in this age of AI and a lot of debate around the sustainability factors of that, I'm really excited to have that as part of LNTV for the next few months. And secondly, we're delighted to welcome back a very familiar face to those of you who've been with LNTV for a long time. Lisa Minogue-White is coming back to grace us with her presence. And she's presenting a new feature where she's talking to authors of books related to our space. We know, well, there's some good authors, aren't there? Oh,
there are one or two, Kate. One or two.
And I know like Laurie Niles Hoffman has a book coming out as well. So there's like some really exciting publications coming forward. And we're actually going to be turning that into a podcast discussion around books as well. So I am looking forward to nerding out on that and getting some reading recommendations for the summer. But who else have we got on the show, Nigel?
Well, we've got two new faces. So it's all a bit new this month, which is really great, I think. Well, the first new face is Rachel George from Lloyds Bank, and she's the head of generative business intelligence. So she's related adjacent to L&D, but not right in the middle of it. And she's going to talk to me about a high impact data summer school that she organized. Literally thousands of people from Lloyds came together across last summer, being repeated this summer, to just get their heads around new data, new technology, generative AI. And it just proves that if you give people opportunities, they are curious. And this is a very safe space for everyone to act in. And it has been enormously successful, kind of against the odds, and I think against expectations. So it's a great case study from Rachel. And then Sangeeta Sharma. She's a big creativity guru. So again, someone in an adjacent space. She talks about creativity, empathy, and somatic awareness. Somatic means with the body, whole body awareness. And she talks about communication in business and the importance of being fully present in all you do.
So without further ado, I feel like we've talked enough, Nigel. We've got to get on with the show.
I think we're better. It's all about the other people, not us, Kate. I know it's hard to imagine, but it's true. Enjoy the show.
Enjoy the show.
It's a real pleasure today to catch up with Rachel George. I met her first time ever at the Learning Technologies Conference recently. And I was so intrigued by her story that I asked her to come on to Learning Now TV. So Rachel is the Senior Manager for Generative Business Intelligence at Lloyds Bank. So first of all, welcome, Rachel. It's so nice to see you again.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a real pleasure. But tell everyone, what is generative business intelligence? We all know about business intelligence, but I don't think many people have heard of generative business intelligence. Explain what your role is.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of us have heard of business intelligence, and a lot of us have heard about generative AI, and what generative BI is really the marriage of the two. So where you have solutions today like ChatGPT, which is a generative AI solution that can look at and it's really powerful on finding text and analyzing text. What generative BI is using that kind of technology, but on your traditional business intelligence software. And so what that does is really looks at your more traditional data sets and is able to analyze them very quickly, create dashboards, create visuals, and give time to insight for your leaders, for your colleagues, make that much quicker, because you no longer need to spend as much time creating it, and your consumers are able to ask many more questions of whatever you have created than they would have through a traditional kind of BI solution.
To me, Rachel, you've put your finger on, I think, something that is going to be growing and growing and growing. So you're right on the curve of something really important, and I'm sure you're right that this is the beginning of something that will eventually, I think, wipe out traditional business intelligence. It will be incorporated in it. So you've got interrogation. You're on the way to your agentic AI, where you can have a conversation with data, which is fascinating. And you're right there. So congratulations. That's a really great place to be, I would imagine. And it is very exciting, but we're not, we could talk about this forever, but what we're here to talk about is the data summer schools that you've run. You've run two, one is on the way. And I just thought it was fascinating just listening to you talking about the data summer school. So this is Lloyds Bank. Rachel didn't have a massive budget to throw at this and huge amounts of resource, 3 people, and got to thousands of staff. So tell us a little bit more. What is a data summer school? Why did you do it? And what were the results?
Yeah, absolutely. So Data Summer School is, well, it's kind of what it says on the tin, right? It's a school to teach you data skills that happens over our summertime. And really, to begin with, I was looking to test a few theories. I mean, there was only 3 of us. Our job was to get more people engaged in business intelligence. And I figured running a learning program was a great way to help with that engagement. I think there is a big assumption across all industries that people who aren't in data aren't really that bothered about learning data. And I always found that to be untrue. So I wanted to retest that theory. I wanted to see how many people we could engage. But we also needed to do things a little differently. So to begin with, when we were looking to create the Data Summer School based on how we were providing learning solutions at the time, over a month, we probably would have engaged about 140 colleagues, I think was our rough estimate. And we managed to use fear of missing out to our advantage. And for our first Data Summer School, it was only on data visualization. And we still managed to engage 1,000 people before we even started and sell out of most of our classes. And by the end of our first year, we engaged 2,500 colleagues, which is huge compared to
Massive.
Yes. Compared to 140.
And what would the unit cost have been for each of those individuals? It would have been pennies, wouldn't it, to have got that number of people together? Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was no incremental cost to the business whatsoever, because we didn't have funding, so we weren't able to purchase any resources. We utilized SME volunteers who, out of the goodness of their heart, wanted to impart this knowledge. And it's a real testament to the learning culture that we have at Lloyds Banking Group that we had that many data SMEs who wanted to help us. I mean, last year we expanded, we covered all things data, and we had over 100 volunteers across the group, kind of pushing 200 to deliver 150 classes over July and August, reaching over 5,000 colleagues. I mean, we had 43,000. Yeah, doubled year on year, and we had 43,000 registrations, best part of 43,000 registrations last year. So the colleagues who did attended a lot of classes. They didn't just come to one, they came to, on average, over 8, which just goes to show how much people are really keen to learn about this. And this year, we've got a data culture team who will be running it, who I'm really excited to see what they're going to bring. And obviously, AI is a huge subject right now, and I'm sure they're going to blow my numbers out of the water again year on year in terms of engagement, because our colleagues are really keen to ask us now a lot more about data and AI learning than they would have 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, what you're doing is you're satiating a kind of hidden desire, because people realize the future is data analytics, and it's kind of scary. Do I have to jump over this big hurdle? And what you've done is make it easy, baby steps. So you're saying, hey, come along here, you'll learn, you'll grow, you'll be able to incorporate data analytics much more into your day-to-day work, and you're making yourself as an employee of Lloyd's more relevant, continually employable, and you're building your own skills portfolio. So it's a kind of win-win-win-win-win all around, isn't it? And
Oh,
at
absolutely, yeah.
virtually no cost. You should have a little Lloyd's medal around your neck.
I know. Thank you. Although I have got myself a reputation now of being able to deliver great things without being given any money to do it. So that's so maybe I don't want that reputation, Nigel. But
yes. That's what you wish for. Don't get too excited about getting what you wish for. Yes, because they'll say, "Oh, Rachel, everything's done for nothing."
yeah, she'll find a way.
Yes. So out of all of this process that's now nearly 3 years in the making, what have you learned? What are the lasting impacts, both for you, but also for Lloyds Bank?
Oh, absolutely. I think my first one is don't make any assumptions about the learners that you want to engage without at least trying to test some of your theory. I mean, if my team didn't push didn't push for their first summer school to retest the theory of people don't want to learn about data, then we never would have got the results that we got today. And so I think you can't assume these things. If you provide these carrots for people to come in and nibble on, and you create a culture of fear of missing out, then you are kind of onto a winner. I think my second one is very much creating that fear of missing out culture, because any kind of learning that we were trying to deliver post summer school was selling out within minutes, which is a great problem to have, having the people that engaged. And I think that is really cool. I think one of the things I would say that we didn't do so great last year was because we expanded so much, then folks who were trying to learn found it a little bit more difficult to navigate. And I think we could have probably reached a lot more people if we'd have made that navigation a little bit easier. And so that's something that we've fed back to our data culture team for running it this year, is make that any additional clicks that a colleague's got to make to try and book something on is just a disadvantage. So make it as easy as possible for people to engage.
And I guess put it into a journey. So you can say, if you're at this stage, then go here. If you're at this stage, go here. And if you like this first thing, this eases a progression. So it's kind of a bit more structure maybe. But what you've done is not only fear of missing out, but you've taken away the fear of entering into a new domain where you might feel that, oh, I'll make a fool of myself. Oh, people will think that I'm not very numerate or whatever, and you've taken that away completely. So you've said, hey, anyone can do this. This is for everybody, and we're going to take you through from the very beginning, so you don't have to worry.
Absolutely, it really is. I mean, last year we focused a lot more on our practitioners, so bringing them from kind of up to more advanced skills. But our first year, 88% of the people who engaged with us were not in data job families. So they were people who we wrote off as not data people and probably didn't care. And to be able to engage that many people was incredible. And last year we introduced a break it to build it type class. What we noticed was part of the fear that people have of getting things wrong is they don't know how to problem solve, or they struggle to problem solve when they're really new to it. So we created that fail fast, or really fostered that fail fast mindset of saying, come to our session, we're going to break this thing as much as we can and show you how to fix it. And that has really helped people to understand, actually, if I break my report once, Lloyds Banking Group is going to survive. So yeah, and giving them the mechanisms to be able to fix things as well.
Yeah, so it's about experimentation,
Mm.
fulfilling a lot of innate curiosity in the organization, which wasn't being met because people were too reluctant to step forward and there weren't the opportunities to step forward. And also, just if you create a buzz around fear of missing out, "Oh, I must be part of this," then you're doing so well. And then make a good, easy user interface and step people through it from real beginners to people more advanced. What great advice. What a fantastic achievement, Rachel. I think you've done an
Thank you,
amazing job.
Nigel.
And it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. What a fortunate, serendipitous meeting at Learning Technologies. So glad to talk to you. And thank you very much for all your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Nigel. This has been a lovely quarter of an hour to chat with you. So.
Great. Thank you.
Happy helps organisations create happy workplaces based on a culture of trust and freedom where people make their own decisions without acknowledgement from managers. We have a core flagship programme, 4 days based across 3 months, where people come and tell what they have achieved. We call it the Happy Leadership Programme. Check it out at happy.co.uk or email me at henry@happy.co.uk.
And we welcome Rob Hubbard. Rob is kicking off his new mini-series on sustainability in L&D, and he's doing it with a conversation with Mike Barry, who explains how sustainability is absolutely core to business strategy.
So I'm here today with Mike Barry, a strategic advisor, speaker and commentator on sustainable business. Mike was also previously director of sustainable business for Marks and Spencer's. So Mike, first of all, how would you define the business case for sustainability in today's corporate landscape beyond its environmental and its social dimensions?
Well, Rob, I mean, 3 R's. It's all about risk, resilience and relevance. Risk is the old paradigm when you were worried about an NGO or a newspaper exposing you, and in the world of social media, that's still a massive risk, particularly when people don't particularly trust big corporations. We're leaving that paradigm now. We're entering a new one, which is this second word, resilience. And now it's starting to become much more business critical. So you're starting to see impacts on just-in-time, very finely tuned global supply chains, whether it's been through tariffs, geopolitics, and increasingly extreme weather. So I come from a background of the food industry. It's getting harder and harder to get the food you want, or the quality what you want, the price point you want, the availability you want. So building resilience in the round in your value chains to ensure that you can continue to satisfy your customers is today's issue. And the third one, relevance, is looking into the future. This is ensuring you've got the products and services that the marketplace of 5 to 10 years, not 15, 20, 25, but 5 to 10 years will require you to do. And you can't just pivot to those overnight. You need to stop gliding into it today, preparing. But what's happening in the power sector, the shift from fossil fuels to renewables, what's happening in cars, the shift from diesel to electric, they're complicated. And that's my very point. They're complicated shifts. You get it wrong, you get it right. You need to start planning now. Food and drink is going to be the next one to be disrupted, but we'll see infrastructure, we'll see telecommunications, pharma, many other sectors disrupted. It's ensuring that you've got the right sustainable product and service offering your customers in the future. So that's my business case, the 3 R's.
Very, very good. Thank you. So what would you say are some of the most compelling operational or financial benefits that companies typically experience after adopting sustainability standards or practices?
Well, just casting back to my old M&S days, and we'll save the business £750 million net over 10 years from taking steps to reduce food waste, to reduce plastic use, lorry miles, energy use in stores. So all the time we were chiseling cost out of the business in a very competitive marketplace to help it reinvest in the rebirth of the business. So that hard cash had a lot of relevance to the business straight away. It wasn't a pipe dream. It wasn't about offering something in 3, 5, 10 years. So that's important. But making sure that you're making hard numbers now. So that's number one. Number two, to me, was about motivation of teams. Again, that M&S that I worked with went through a lot of quite bruising transformational change. Despite that, 60, 70,000 colleagues were tremendously motivated for lots of reasons. You know, M&S, good employer, but also because they're working with a business that had a pride and a passion and a desire to do the right thing in the right way as well. And the third was organisational. So M&S was a very silo business. There's a food business over there and a clothing business there and marketing there and property over here. And our sustainability programme, called Plan A, because it's not Plan B for the one planet we've got, was a real convener of one business, one set of people working for one outcome, not just their own specific day job. So they were the sort of immediate benefits we saw from taking action.
Yeah, very comprehensive. So, I mean, in terms of measuring return on investments, how can businesses measure and communicate the ROI on their sustainability initiatives to internal and external stakeholders? How can they kind of demonstrate the value in that?
Well, two thoughts. I mean, when we launched our plan, and I've seen lots of other businesses do that, it was a very conventional sustainability plan framed in issues like human rights, deforestation, water, soil, carbon, all the things the outside world would measure you on. But you don't sell carbon per se, you sell products and services. So we had to pivot the plan to talk about the products we actually sold. 3 billion items, a pair of shoes, a bunch of flowers, a bottle of wine, and ensuring that each of those at a secondary level then had a story to tell about how sustainable it was. But the metric we were measuring was the number of products, we get the word products, we were selling with a sustainability story to tell. So that's the first thing, is framing it around what you actually do, not what the outside world is looking for a KPI. And that's my job as the Director of Sustainability, is to translate the product metrics internally into the measures that the outside world is looking at. But it's a little bit more than that as well. You've got to measure it on a regular basis. So only when we were measuring that £750 million net, even in the business that was desperate to sort of save money, it still seemed a bit ethereal for people's day jobs. So we created this really granular program to measure how much we were spending on each individual initiative in each part of the business and how much we were saving. So we had a P&L distributed out across the value chain, so you can track on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis hard money. And it became part of the argot, the conversation within the business, rather than just something that was knocked out in the sustainability report once a year. So regularity mattered, grounded it in the products and services you sold mattered.
Yeah, baking it into your operations and your reports as just business as usual. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Absolutely. So my final question is, looking ahead, how do you see the role of sustainability evolving in terms of driving long-term business growth and resilience, especially in volatile or uncertain markets?
Well, I've already talked about shifting from the old world of reputation to one of resilience and relevance. And let me expand upon that. Relevance and resilience are utterly dependent not on the sustainability team in the centre of business, however good they may be. They're dependent on the people who run the business and the value chain on a day-to-day basis. The procurement team, the finance team, the HR team, the R&D team, the supply chain team. So ensuring that they've got the capability and understanding to run it and integrate it into their day jobs, as opposed to sort of ringing a friend once a year and say, Greenpeace is knocking on my door, what do I do? It's very much about upskilling the wider business and helping them see the benefits and ensuring that they're confident to do it. So to me, that's the great initial trend, is integration. And then the great transformational issue is relevance. This point about, I used to sell dirty, old, unsustainable products and services and now got to pivot to very different ones. It's hard to imagine. Lots of hard work has been done over the last 10, 15 years in business on social and environmental issues, all of it which has been about perpetuating the status quo. You didn't change what you sold, you just changed behind the scenes how you did it, and even that was quite minor in many cases. Now if you start to think about a very different approach of delivering electric car on a diesel car, very different value chain, very different proposition for the customer. The food shift that we see, we don't have time to go into it now, but the concept of food as a service, linking sustainability and human health, well-being for planet and people together. The ability to click a button on the website that automatically shapes a basket for you, 50 different products you buy each week, to a sustainable choice in a split second, driven by AI. They're the kind of revolutions that will come, and you need to start preparing for them. So that's the great shift that we're going to see, integration and then radical shifts in the products and services you sell.
Yeah. So good news there for people in L&D. You know, you're talking about capability building and learning right across the business. And, you know, this is what we really excel at. I think it's a really interesting time for L&D with AI coming on, but all the benefits that can be driven by, you know, getting on board with sustainability initiatives and, you know, as you've explained, getting them baked in as business as usual across our organisations.
And a final thought on that, Rob. I mean, AI is a massively useful tool for L&D. It is for my world. Those 3 billion items I talked about, I was trying to track and trace them with a spreadsheet, doing it with AI, big data, remote sensing. Brilliant. But there's a much more human part of this that we often forget. Taking people on the journey and say, we used to sell X and now we're selling Y. You can't just leave that for a machine to tell you to do it. You need a human transformational wrap round around it as well. So L&D using AI, yes, but L&D using those old human skills as well, just simple.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, as a human, I'm delighted to hear that. So, Mike Barry, thank you so much for today.
Rob, thank you.
It's a real pleasure to bring Martin back onto LNTV to talk about another really important report. So, Martin, what have you got for us today that will wow everybody watching?
Well, it might wow everyone, or it might just get people to think about the kind of current state of learning and development, because this report is the Learning and Development Impact Survey 2025 from Hemsley Fraser. Now, they have, over the last 2 or 3 years, they've done an annual report of around between 500 and 1,000 L&D professionals. So it's, not a small sample size. And I thought this one was interesting because, it's just recently been published. And it kind of, there was some kind of red flags in it, I thought. So, and as we've discussed previously, when we look at research, I think it's always good to use research to sort of use it as a mirror to hold up to your own organisation. And I think this one is probably in that category. So they've asked 880 or so learning professionals a range of questions, and some of them, 50% of them are in the US, 50% in the UK, mostly learning and development people.
Yes, and it's over about 10 topics. Guess what? Generative AI is one of them. You'd probably be totally surprised about that. But budgets, innovation, measurement, performance objectives, human skills, learning strategy, employee performance, etc., etc. So it's a pretty comprehensive review, isn't it, overall?
Yeah, and I think, you might look at it and think, okay, so what are the big headlines in here? And I think there's one that's quite interesting, actually, and it's the kind of the fact that lots of people say they're interested in using AI, and I'm going to talk about AI. We don't have to talk about it. It's a part of this research, but basically, only 36% are really using it at the moment.
As another statistic, 46% don't have time to explore AI.
So but the 36% is really important, actually, because all viewers will know that things are changing fast. I know there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of hype, and you wouldn't necessarily expect everyone to be moving at the same speed, because it's very contextual in terms of the type of organization you work in. However, that's quite a low proportion of learning professionals who are we're actually using it. As 36%, yes, we're using it, but we're in the beginning stages. 25% aren't using it, but are open to it. Yes, 13% aren't sure, 12% not at all. So actually, there's kind of sort of thinking, well, that's a bit of a red flag for me. So, and they then, the research then talks about the type of AI applications, and I think it wouldn't be too surprised, that it's been used for content authoring, curation, personalization, they are the things that have been, when we're talking about AI has been around for a long time in learning and development. So, I mean, those are known use cases. They're not new. They might be being accelerated. But then there are other areas that are also being used, such as, coaching, job aids, those kinds of things. So it's happening, but I think it's a bit slow. That's kind of, for me, that feels like the sort of headline out of this in terms of the AI insight from the research.
I think that's pretty reasonable summary. So we're moving forward, but not very fast. The whole report seems to lack. There's not a sense of urgency emerging from it, is there? It's steady as she goes.
I think so, but I'm not sure. I think it's quite interesting because I think it's just an honest sort of state of the nation type report, really. I don't think it's purporting to be anything other than that. And I think it's okay. Maybe the function as a whole is grappling with this. It knows it needs to be doing it, but actually, it hasn't got all the answers yet, which is pretty much as it will be for lots of functions in lots of organizations. I think also the other interesting thing I thought was the learning approaches. So the sort of how is learning kind of being delivered, if you like. And the most popular or most used approaches are in person, then coaching, virtual and instructor-led training, just reading my list, free online sources, learning hubs, blended learning. So there we have it. In person is the most used at the moment. So that, if you went to any kind of conference right now, that is not what is being talked about. It's all about AI and it's all about technology. And here we have
the truth, if you like,
well,
for the other side of the coin.
But the thing is, it's all about nuance, isn't it? And I think this is why this kind of report is worthy of attention, because actually the reality is that organizational context, return to office type diktats, hybrid working, these kinds of factors determine how learning is manifest in organizations. So would it be a surprise that people come into the office and need to be together, and maybe they need to be together to solve problems more because it's better, a better context for that? I don't know, but that might be driving some of the in-person stuff.
The big demands that they're claiming dominate most of the life of L&D people in largish companies: boosting talent retention, engaging employees, and supporting organizational goals, which hasn't much changed. So maybe the perception is that's easier to do face-to-face than it is in any other mode. But it does seem curious when you've got an AI bot sitting on your shoulder that can help develop you in any dimension you want, and do it really quickly and in a very personable way, and point you to resources and generally extend your expertise. A bot that you can have a talk to if you need to clarify what you think or what seems to be emerging, access to all that research, that plonking people in a room is the solution. And particularly if it's plonking people in a room and delivering the traditional 75 PowerPoint slides, doesn't seem to me to be deeply ambitious. But I could be naive or wrong or both.
Hey, but that's, no one in this report says that that's what's going on. I think it's just, I'm just saying that's what it's saying about the most used approaches currently, and that's what they are. Now that could be another set of red flags, really, that actually, why hasn't the industry shifted on? I think reports like this tend to pose more questions sometimes than they answer.
Yes, I think that's fair to do.
But I think what I would say is maybe learning, maybe there is a lot of face-to-face activity still. And maybe that's because lots of people have the skills to do that, and that's the comfort zone, maybe. And also, there's that kind of lag, isn't there, between adopting new technologies? They arrive, and then there's adoption. And I think, lots of learning teams are working furiously to figure out how to use AI. But the only problem with that is that's also happening at the same time as the organizations are trying to work out how to use AI. So at a systems level, whole organization level, I think there's something there about being able to work in tandem with the organization.
Yeah, it says, despite ongoing challenges, L&D is showing it knows the path forward, aligning to business goals, making an impact with limited resources, and building the right skills for success. And while the journey isn't easy, L&D doesn't have to do it alone. So there's a partnership element emerging. That's I guess, a reasonable middle-of-the-road conclusion. This is not rocket science. There's not astonishing things going on, but slow, steady progress towards a focus on what the organization needs, not what L&D interprets the organization's needs as. So, fair enough. Fair point, Martin.
Well, I'm not... The only other thing I would say is that what we're seeing is an increase in some of the things we might expect to see. So basically, measuring impact, there is an increase in measuring business impact, rather than although learner feedback is still the number one way of measuring, impact. So, and we know that's a whole separate discussion. But the point is that at least there is an increase in trying to measure it against business impact.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair summary. It's moving forward, but very slowly. Very slowly. Thank you, Martin. I think this is a great report. It's certainly worth reading. The link is on the screen. Read through it. It's not a long report. It's only about 30 pages, something like that. And it is excellent. Martin, appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Nigel.
Next up, it's time for our regular news roundup with Rob Clark. This month, he's bringing us all the news, insights, and scoop from the Learning Technology Show in London.
So I want to learn more about how AI can impact our learning and how it can be effective for our end users in the business.
I work for Lloyds Banking Group and we deal with a lot of the suppliers that are here, and I'm actually speaking at the conference today. I was speaking about mandatory training. I've been coming for the last 2 or 3 years and it's just amazing value and see really what's going on in the L&D space.
As NHS, we need to be abreast of what's happening so we can look at future ways of training our workforce.
To catch up with some network contacts and to meet up with some suppliers I'm working with.
Welcome to Learning Technologies 2025. AI is changing our world. How might we expect it to change workplace learning?
We have to move our concept of what learning means beyond content. If we do that and think about how we share the great things we know, AI can transform it in a variety of ways. For example, personalization, hyper-personalization regarding context, views, ways of learning. Social learning, it can get people in touch with the right people to help them. And the third area that I'm seeing a lot of growth in is coaching. The use of AI to support coaching, it's going to be transformative. That's not traditional L&D, but it's going to make a huge difference.
How do we keep the human voice in all of that, and how do we ensure that we're designing human experiences? And that's really a core and a central focus of what we do at Kineo.
We're constantly looking at ways that we can modernize that learning experience to get the right type of learning in front of the learner at the right time in the most authentic and in the workflow kind of moment.
It will evolve and it will change again, but we've got to see it as a enabler and something that we embrace.
Using AI to support adaptive learning. So this ensures that one user will have access to courses, information, data based on who they are, what country they're in, what their job role is, and what their priorities are.
Can we use AI to create better learning experiences, more dynamic, engaging, interactive ones that we couldn't do before, like new things, not just doing the same things we were doing before, faster or cheaper, but use AI to create new experiences. I'm really excited to see what a lot of the vendors here can do in that world.
We've had loads of conversations today with complex organizations looking at where their skills gaps are, how they're going to get people to go on particular pathways. All of that can really be done through simple clicks of a button now, and so AI really in the future will be anything from induction to comprehensive degrees or master's programs.
How do you turn the workflows into agentic workflows so that you can do more with less?
Platforms are going to have to adapt. People are much more likely to go elsewhere for their learning. They can find that information really easily. So as L&D, we really need to be focusing on how we add value.
Accelerating the ability for folks to take a document like a PDF or a PowerPoint and turning that into an interactive video. We've come a long way.
I think the people that bought into things like 70-20-10 and 5 moments of need and 5DI, those that are really driven by business impact, this is a phenomenal time to really allow that creativity to be unlocked.
Some of the most exciting things I've seen is those solution providers who are using it well are really starting to, find some real momentum behind their solutions in a way they wouldn't have been able to before. I think that's quite exciting, in fact.
For the first time since the invention of work, humans have had to ask, what is my role? The adoption of AI is not a tech adoption, it's a human change management initiative. So it's not just about prompt engineering or having a co-pilot internally. It's about how we change our mindset from me to me plus AI.
How many times have we heard the question, how do I make my compliance learning more engaging? When we really got under the skin of it, it was a real opportunity to enrich their employee value proposition and really show employees that they were invested in.
What was the problem you were trying to solve at Rolls-Royce?
So Rolls-Royce were looking for a way to reduce the learning time but still offer a really kind of solid compliance experience. So we worked with Rolls-Royce on a methodology where learners could test out based on their existing knowledge.
Getting the right training to the right people at the right time with the right tools with AI is more important than ever.
I expect to see less courses. AI is primarily used to create even more courses faster. I wouldn't understand why. I just saw Jason Wang from NVIDIA claiming that the IT department will be the new HR department because they will sit on AI agents. Does HR want this? I don't think they want this. Does L&D want this? I don't think so. And that's why I think we will move away from building courses and learning path to facilitating conversations between humans and AI to create value.
There's always going to be a need for people who are professionals in understanding how to get the best out of people at work, how to really drive performance, how to drive skills.
Back in the day, we're going from paper-based training to going online. Now we're going from online to AI-enabled, right? And I think it's taken a little bit of time for people to kind of really take to grips with that kind of technology.
A thing we're picking up from our customers is there's so much going on, how do I keep up? Understanding what is out there, it can be quite overwhelming for people to think maybe I should be looking at this, maybe I should be doing that.
Trying to get people hooked on learning. We're very often, we'll just put out one email and say, hey, there's a new course, and we need to stop doing that. We need to build suspense and intrigue for our learning to make people actually want to take it.
Some of the technology that's being integrated is helping L&D teams optimize what they're currently doing, which means that they're going to have more time on their plate, or some of the tasks that they've been doing aren't going to be as necessary as they have been in the past.
We have to think differently than we've done in the past. The old way of thinking is not going to harness those opportunities.
It is a real pleasure to connect with one of my Antarctica pals. She was there in 2014, I was there in 2016, but we were on the same program, the 2041 program. And it is a treat to see you. And welcome Sangeeta Sharma to Learning Now TV. Sangeeta is a creativity and business coach advisor, trusted advisor, she calls herself. So what I'd like to do to start with, welcome Sangeeta, first of all. It's really a pleasure to see you and catch you on camera. What is this creativity business advisor? What do you actually do? Tell us.
I help people get in touch with the areas of their creative skill sets where they hold value and help translate that value into how those skills can then impact the organizations they work with and translate into monetizational benefits.
Yeah. What does that actually mean? What is a creative skill set? What are the things that you're plugging into, the qualities, traits, skills, whatever they might be?
It's a variety of things. It's everything from coming up with an idea, allowing yourself to be in flow and creating something and going with it and not questioning it, not judging it. There are creative principles that we apply in those processes that also apply to business, whether it's developing a software product or building a system. They are the same principles at their core. The other benefits and skills that you develop are listening, empathy, communication. All of these skills are strengthened through, I don't know if anyone's done training like it, but Meisner, method, movement psychology. They help human beings connect with each other and understand what it means to truly be present, truly be listening to another. These skills are invaluable in business, as we know, because we can't learn them in our conditioning environments all the time. We do have to go out into the world to learn them, and we need to be in safe spaces to do that.
Now, I would say that these are core skills for learning, that if you can't listen, it's really hard to learn. If you haven't got empathy, you don't understand the environment you're in. So would you agree that these are just the prerequisites for creating a flexible, open mindset and put yourself in a position where you learn?
Absolutely. And cultivating that beginner's mindset, being able to learn, is what strengthens the brain. We've got our left hemisphere and our right hemisphere. For the longest time, creatives, well, you're very right brains. And then we have the logical, okay, we've got the left. But we want to bring these together because we want to be in harmony. And everything around us is a reflection of us, ultimately. So when we go into environments, if we're feeling like we have to disconnect, not be an essential part of ourselves where we can bring these skills in, that's going to harm us and it harms the environment and the people around us, quite frankly. So absolutely, core skills and the arts are the key to actually developing them.
So if you were talking to someone and they had some deficits, you wouldn't say go on a course. You'd say just learn these skills, put yourself in a position where you can learn from others and just switch on. Is that right?
It's a great question because actually, no, I'd probably sit with them and walk them through a little bit of repetition from Meisner, just because that's the training that helped me connect and be fully present and not be afraid to let information in. And no matter what's coming up, completely be present, be able to regulate, be able to let it in, affect me, and then send it back, actually respond to it real time. So I'd start there, talking to each other, allowing that space for listening to occur, because until somebody experiences something for themselves, it doesn't land. It won't stay in the system.
Yeah. And does that include embracing contradiction, being challenged by things that you might believe that may not be absolutely right? So just putting yourself in, making yourself vulnerable, in other words, making yourself ready to take on new information, new ideas, new concepts.
Well, you raise a good point, because making ourselves ready, vulnerable, well, let's just assume we're always in that state. We are already there from day one, and it's being with what is. It's not pushing back. When I've gone into meetings, sometimes we've got brainstorming and I just say, okay, everybody's right. That's it. That's where we start. Everybody's right. And now it's not an argument. We are in discovery mode. And that then creates some openness for people to talk, go places that they might not otherwise, because let's face it, our mistakes are sometimes where our best ideas come from. Yeah. That missed note on the piano, that comment that somebody made. But the listening isn't just, our ears, our mind. It's somatically. You're listening with each other and your energies. You're in the room together. You know when somebody has said something that makes you go, oh, hold on, I felt that. And then you can go with it. And yeah, these are skills that don't necessarily, let's say, they're not cultivated in courses, but we can cultivate them ourselves. We do. I've spent some time learning, investing in my own education. I'm an artist, I'm a creative, and I was in the business world. But when I'm in the business environment, the corporate environment, the creativity is a wonderful thing. Everybody loves it. but it doesn't necessarily feed back into the human being that then brings it to the company.
You're
And
saying something really important, which is you mentioned the somatic domain. I mean, basically, that's the body, the whole. So you're saying learning is a whole person experience. It's not just an intellectual. It's where you park your body and bring your mind. It's actually the opposite. It's bringing the whole person in. If you can get people to engage the whole person, they will be much more effective learners.
So let's put it into creative speak. If I was a piano player, my piano would be my instrument. But as an actor, my entire being is my instrument. Being fully present in my physical body is my instrument. So yeah, being fully present, somatically connected, the gut, the heart, the brain, all of it working together. And it happens instinctively. It's not that somebody has to sit there and think about it. The experience is what locks this information in. Our bodies are incredible. I learned this in Antarctica. I went there with a back injury and thought I couldn't climb up glaciers, and realized 2 weeks later that I wasn't in pain, and it was just me. It was just me thinking I couldn't do it. And and also just diving into the polar waters, I genuinely felt my entire system come back on after going through so much injury and surgery. I felt healed. I felt different. I really did. And I became even more connected then physically to my body. I listened to it. I know some people, they'll eat. Okay, it's time to eat. I tend not to be like that. I know I need to eat, but my body will tell me when it's time. It's that kind of awareness that begins to exist within us when we do this kind of work, when we look at all these creative skills that we can build, because we're always working on our instrument, regardless of, which modality it might be, whether it's music, whether it's painting. The inner experience is then being expressed outwardly. So that's where we can cultivate the listening, the being present, the compassion for ourselves, and the compassion for the people we work with. So going back to your original question, if somebody wanted to learn these skills, I would sit and talk to them. I want to experience that person first, because people know, we say, but we're not always listening to ourselves. So when somebody else is listening, you can hear the clues. The answer is in the human being.
Yes. I completely agree with you. I understand exactly what you're saying. And that emphasis on learning to learn and being effectively present in a situation is untouched, really, in corporate life. We shovel people through courses, but we rarely help them be competent and useful learners in the world. And they have to do that to survive. What about that you wrote something that I really liked a long time ago, 2016, 10 years ago. Content is a conversation. What do you mean by content is a conversation? Because I love that idea. Content is a conversation. Explain that to me.
So in 2016, I had begun to make my transition into the world of the arts a bit more fully. I was finding my way. I had started in enterprise content management and worked on systems with relational databases, being able to take a Word document, take a video, transcribe, do all of these things and store it somewhere meaningful. But as I was looking, we now were moving into the world at this point, 2015, 2016. We've got comments, people are talking, we want to collaborate online together. Google Drive, Google Docs, we're beginning to move into this world where we're now talking through, I made a comment here and now I've made another comment here. I'm beginning to see that, hold on, let's put these things together. And now I start to see how people are thinking, feeling, what they need, what they don't need. I'm beginning to get the real conversation through all of these notes going through these platforms, web apps, whatever it might be. And this is how I then moved into NLP and text analytics with AI, with a company called Luminoso, where we were able to take verbatims, whether it was surveys, whatever it was, and then analyze them. And all of a sudden, we're working with a dimensional model of like 150 plus dimensions to be able to get context, sentiment, feeling. Okay, so now we've got traces. The organization talks, and it talks through the documents and the things it works on, just the way it talks through the system that it's entering details into. And this thing in turn then has an effect on the mindset of the entire company. You're now cultivating an ability to communicate between departments because we have a common focal point. And I now see this translating into the applications companies develop.
What you're also saying is that the power of connectivity, and this is one of the things I'm obsessed about, that if you can connect people in an organization, not just I know that your name's Sangeeta, but we've got some much more deep level connection that when you speak, I'm listening. When I speak, I ask you questions, you help me, I help you. If you can amplify that around a whole organization, you grow much more power so that the sum of the parts is far greater than the individuals.
Thank you. One company where I worked, it was amazing. We were just going through the third wave. iPads had just come out. I'd been developing groups within the company. Let's talk about this. I'm one of those. Let's get together. I love the talking part, of course.
Yeah.
And we had part of the company that was a hardware mindset and part of the company that's a software mindset. The two things do not match up on paper. The kind of sales deals that go through for hardware deals, much bigger. Software sales cycles, much longer. So you've now got an immediate disconnect. And now we're adding apps to the equation. We're adding new technologies that are coming out really, really, really fast. And companies want to adapt quickly. So one of the things that I did was help train the sales team, so enable sales. And I created a forum. And what I would do is take examples, video examples, like a commercial. One commercial was for a home furnishings company. A woman is walking around her living room. She just touches something. It changes. Different color, different object. She's walking. And all I did was ask, first of all, the very first question, what do you see? And we had lots of very different responses, but I started there, which is, let all of us focus on these questions first. What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? Not to be confrontational, because this is scary stuff. It's not easy to do. And I think one of the things I noticed was the word appropriate becomes a bit of a euphemism for don't do that here. Don't say that here. That if you don't have some shape or place of safety, conversations cannot happen.
But you're talking really interesting, contemporary, cutting edge ideas around what is learning in an organization. And I salute you and I wish you the very best of luck. So Sangeeta Sharma, it's a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Well, that's the end of another program, and we'll see you again next month. So, Kate, what about the show? What did you think? What struck you?
Great to have some new faces and some new features. Very exciting. And as we always say, we love to get people's feedback. So do drop us a line if there's anything that stands out or if there's anything you feel that we could add or is missing. But one of the things that really stood out to me from the discussion that you had with Martin was around the research and this idea that there's a slow uptake around AI. So there's this sort of gap between, the hype cycle and the reality. And I think, coming off the back of, we were both at the Learning Technology Show in London last month. And, there's so much noise around it, but the reality of how that is systematically brought in and rolled out and adopted in organizations, that's not an overnight thing. I mean, the guys at Fosway will talk about, there's no point, you can have all the innovation you want in, say, a SaaS product, but there's always going to be a lag in terms of how quickly the organization can adopt that. Even if they've got access to it and they can switch the thing on, doesn't necessarily mean that people are ready for that change management, etc. So, I mean, I see at Cornerstone, like we're doing a lot internally now around our usage of AI and how we're facilitating that and how we're doing that. Different departments having hackathons for different use cases for, as I say, internal usage, as well as obviously, what's going on in the product. But it doesn't surprise me. And I think that it should not give us pause necessarily, but it's an important part to note when so many vendors and tech firms and blah, blah are rushing like this. It's, like AI is this arms race because there's still that gap.
There is. And I think talking to Rachel George exemplified that. What she discovered in the bank was that there was a massive well of potential surrounded by a kind of moat of fear, if you like, that people are scared to do. They don't want to get punished. They don't want to do something wrong. So there is a hesitancy because a lack of confidence, a lack of knowledge, and a lot of scare stories saying, if you do that, this, you could expose the whole bank and so on. So once you've got confidence, once you've talked about security and all of that stuff, and you have a limited permission to proceed, things change. But what it's, I suppose, Rachel proves it and the report proves it. We've got a long way to go, and it just doesn't happen by magic. It will happen, there's no doubt about it, but it needs to be more controlled and more measured, I think. So
and I like what you said as well, just to finish that off. At the intro, you sort of said about Rachel and Lloyd creating a safe space. And actually, if I reflect on like my own experiences in my work, that's definitely something that has been created for us to try within safe constraints and some boundaries. And, in talking to somebody who's rolling out an agentic AI piece for a client, they very much talk about that need to create a pilot, a safe space for trial and error. And so that's probably a huge takeaway for all of us in the current climate.
I think that's right. I think that's exactly right. And I also wouldn't underestimate that you can do a lot of damage if it's all chaotic and not done properly. But the message is, it may be slow uptake formally, but informally, at home, in people's lives, ChatGPT and other AI tools are massive, absolutely massive. And it's almost pay catch up in organizations trying to tap that potential and turn it into useful workflow productivity. You're 100% right. Okay. So let's talk about, talking of workflow productivity, what we got on, what conferences are there to bring joy to us and enhance our productivity?
We are deep into conference season. So CIPD Festival of Work is happening in London next month on the 11th and 12th. Always falls a week that I'm away, so I never get to go to that one. Unfortunately, I hear great things.
And Learning Live is AI edition. So they've got an AI edition like everyone else. That's on the 26th of June in London. What else, Kate?
And then actually, it's not on my list, but RecFest is happening in July. I think it's the 10th, 11th July. It's on the recruiting side, but I think it's really interesting to see what comes out of that from an overall talent conversation
100%.
perspective.
It's all merging, Kate. It's all merging. We've also got the Learning Impact Summit in the Gold Coast, Australia. That's at Brisbane, Australia, on the 4th and 5th of September.
And then scarily, we're through to September. Then it's Learning Live with our friends at the LPI, back again on 17th and 18th of September. And then finally, we're through to Orlando.
We are. Orlando Learning 2025, the 3rd of October in Orlando, Florida.
So join us again. We'll be back on the 26th of June. As I say, if there's any feedback on the new features, the new faces, anything else you'd like to see, we are all ears. So always drop us a line and let us know your thoughts on the programme.
See you on the 26th of June. Bye.
See you then.